Today, Manhattan prosecutors accused Donald J. Trump of covering up affairs with two mistresses during the 2016 presidential campaign, unveiling 34 felony charges that open a perilous chapter in the long public life of the billionaire businessman who rose to the presidency and now faces the prospect of a shameful criminal trial. Prosecutors accused in a downtown Manhattan courthouse, a somber Donald Trump pled not guilty to 34 felony counts. The former president was in court this afternoon for his arraignment, where he learned about the charges against him for the first time. He did not deliver remarks or answer questions from any reporters heading into the proceedings, but he is expected to give an address tonight from his home in Florida. We will bring you the latest from that address as it gets underway. And in other news, yesterday, First Lady Jill Biden said that she wanted the defeated Iowa women's basketball team to be invited to the White House in addition to national title winner LSU. But after considerable backlash from African Americans, today the First Lady's press secretary appeared to walk back the dual invitation. Chicagoans go to the polls in the mayoral race between very different Democrats. Paul Vallis, a former public school executive, has called for a crackdown on crime and the expansion of the Chicago Police Department, while Brandon Johnson, a county commissioner, wants to expand social programs. Vallis has a 4-point lead according to a Victory Research poll. Others say the race is too close to call. Wisconsin's high-stakes Supreme Court race is underway today as well. The election for a swing seat on the court is likely to determine whether abortion remains illegal in Wisconsin, as well as the future of the state's heavily gerrymandered political maps. The winner will determine majority control of the court. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is the second hour of the show, so I'm taking your calls. Give us a call at 1-800-920-1580, or if you're watching on KBLA's app or YouTube state page, post a comment or question. We will read it on air. And because it's the second hour and because the historic indictment of Donald Trump happened just hours ago, we're going to spend the entire second hour on special coverage of that indictment. Joining me in this hour is criminal defense attorney Mutaqee Akbar. He's going to help us understand what's in that indictment and what it means, what those 34 counts really mean. Is it likely that Trump will go to trial for these charges? And if so, when? And what's the likely outcome? And can Donald Trump really be facing jail time? Also in this hour, I'm joined by Melanie Collette. She's a Republican political commentator. We know that many Republicans have stood up for Donald Trump. They have attacked District Attorney Alvin Bragg, and they have said that this prosecution of him will only make him stronger as a presidential candidate in the 2024 presidential election. Mutaqee and Melanie join us as we come forward right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you looking to steer your career in a new direction? Driving for Culver City Bus can be your ticket to a long-lasting career with excellent benefits and paid training. Culver City Bus is looking for customer service and safety-minded bus operators to join the growing team. Culver City Bus offers on-the-job training starting at $19.10 per hour, uniform allowance, and health benefits. Culver City Bus is a great employer. Let Culver City Bus connect you with an essential service job. If you enjoy driving, seek real opportunities for career advancement, and passionate about making a difference in the community, you are invited to join the Culver City Bus team. Start your journey today by submitting an application at culvercity.org/job. For more info, visit culvercitybus.com or call live customer service operators at 310-253-6500. Again, 310-265-6500.
Mornings were made for better things than rheumatoid arthritis or RA. Xeljanz tofacitinib is a pill for adults with moderate to severe RA when tumor necrosis factor blockers did not work well or could not be tolerated. Xeljanz can help relieve joint pain, swelling, and help stop further joint damage. Xeljanz can lower your ability to fight infections. Don't start if you have one. Before and during treatment, your doctor should check for infections like TB and do blood tests. Serious, sometimes fatal infections, cancers including lymphoma and lung, blood clots, serious heart-related events, tears in the stomach or intestines, and allergic reactions have happened. People 50 and older with heart disease risk factors have an increased risk of death. Tell your doctor if you've had hepatitis B or C, have flu-like symptoms, are prone to infections, or have ever had a heart attack, stroke, clot, or other heart problems, or swelling of lips, tongue, throat, or hives. Ask your doctor about prescription Xeljanz. Visit Xeljanz.com or call 1-844-XELJANZ.
Gain presents a tale of longing and long-lasting scent. Dear love of my life, we were on the 12B bus when I caught a whiff. A scent so fresh, so life-changing, I had to find its source. I didn't know if you were the woman in the pink freshly washed cardigan or the retired mailman next to me, but I knew one of you was my soulmate. Ah, the scent of Gain Flings. Add Gain scent beads for an even longer lasting scent.
The double steak grilled cheese burrito is back at Taco Bell. And in case you didn't know, it's stacked. Yeah, packed inside it is a double serving of premium grilled marinated steak and a melty 3-cheese layer. Then on top of that, it has a layer of grilled bubbly cheese on the outside. Yeah, the outside. Why? Probably because it refuses to be caged in by the confines of its tortilla walls. Or maybe just to add more cheesy flavor.
Double steak grilled cheese burrito. Get one today, only at Taco Bell. Participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last. Double steak claim is compared to steak quesadilla. Contact store for hours of participation with sales.
Donald Trump surrendered to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office this afternoon and later appeared before a judge for his arraignment, where he entered a not guilty plea. This was a surreal scene for a man who once occupied the Oval Office and who is mounting a third run for the White House. Here to help us make sense of today's historic moment is criminal defense attorney Mutaqee Akbar and Republican political commentator Melanie Collette. Welcome to both of you. I want to start with you, Mutaqee. Help us understand what was unveiled today in this 34-count indictment.
So in the indictment, he was charged with 34 different counts, pretty much of the same thing, just different incidents of falsifying business records in the first degree. And I went and, kind of dug up some research for dealing with New York law. And pretty much what it says is that you make a false entry into the business record, which by itself would be a misdemeanor. But if you make that false record in the business record and all with the intent to defraud, and that defraud could include the intent to hide another crime, then it makes it a felony, which is punishable by up to 4 years. So what they did was for each time that Donald Trump wrote a check to cover up the payments that he made or the alleged payments that were made to Stormy Daniels and the other lady, for each check that was written, he got a count for that, for each one. And sometimes prosecutors do that. They break it down by each individual act. And they also had the option to put it all into one count and just spread it out, just say that from February of 2017 up until December 2017, this happened, but instead they broke it down into 34 different counts. So that's what the indictment was all about. Typically, 100% of the time, almost at the arraignment, which is what he had today, there's a plea of not guilty. So there was no surprise about that. So it was set for trial, and we'll see what happens from there.
So we're hearing, Mutaqee, that Trump's team plans to file a plethora, which means a whole lot, of motions challenging the indictment, challenging, as you said, the felony, because they're saying that the bump from the misdemeanor to the felony is based on, and they're going to make the argument, some are saying that it's based on federal election law, and that the New York State legislature, in writing its statutes, criminal statutes, did not intend for the underlying crime that elevates this false business record claim from a misdemeanor to a felony. The underlying crime was not meant to be a federal violation of a federal statute. In addition to that, motion, which everybody expects to come from Trump's team. What other motions do you expect Trump's team to file to challenge the indictment?
Well, I mean, I think that'll be the first one. And when I was reading it, I was looking at it to say, okay, what was the crime that he intended to cover up, or what was the fraud? You know, if he's paying somebody off, you know, how is that necessarily a fraud? But you're right, it is up under the election law because, you know, as far as like trying to hide something and using, you know, whatever payments in order to try to hide that information. It is going to be interesting, though, because I'm not sure how it kind of like goes into it being an election law, some type of election fraud. So I think it's going to be interesting and it's going to be close as far as what the judge decides to do with that. But a motion to dismiss is something that most criminal defense attorneys do. I wholeheartedly expect that it happens. A judge can either have a hearing, a full-out hearing for it to hear it, or a judge can just summarily dismiss it and just say, hey, that's something for a jury to decide. So we'll see how this particular judge handles it. How
likely is it, or how usual or rare is it that an entire indictment is thrown out pre-trial? I mean, you know, criminal defense.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was about to say it's very rare that a judge would do that because you know, as long as the elements are there, the elements of the crime are there, and that the government can show what those elements are and that there are facts to support it, then the judge will let it move forward.
Okay. So not likely that he wins at this pretrial motion. I know there's also talk, which I find so ironic, Melanie, there's talk that he's going to file a motion for a change of venue, arguing that he cannot get a fair trial in his home state and city of New York. Now, this is the city where he used to brag about buildings, you know, being all over the place that had Trump's name on it, and where he threw infamous parties. And, you know, he talked about New York being the place that loved him. And now he's saying, in the place that loved me so much, I can't get a fair trial. Does that shock you, Melanie, that he's saying New York, of all places, can't be fair to him?
No, it's actually not that ironic when you consider that they stopped loving him the moment he ran as a Republican. They stopped being his friend when he ran as a Republican. When I think something like, I don't know, 87% of the constituents in that area in New York vote Democrat. That is not surprising at all. I think many people who kind of, for a lack of a better expression, come out as a Republican, these things do happen. So it's really not all that shocking. What really is shocking, and what I think we should be concerned about as people who want to be unified, as a country, is why people are making those types of decisions, why people are dissing other people because of their political affiliations. Why is that happening? Why is, you know, this whole thing made me think of Mariah Carey, like, you know, because Alvin Bragg was talking about how I've sued him 100 times. Like, why are you so obsessed, dude? That's like admitting after a breakup that you drove by a dude's house 100 times and you still got no play. Like, I would never, if I did that, like if I was that pressed, I would never tell anyone. Just saying.
Well, Melanie, maybe he wasn't bragging about it. Maybe he's just stating the facts, and maybe the dude has done something that warranted him being investigated at the level that he's been investigated and sued at the level that he's been sued. I think Mutaqee Alvin Bragg did something that I thought was brilliant in his press conference. And he put into context this falsifying business records for the very reason that Melanie just stated, because he knew that Republicans were going to say that this was political persecution, that he was being singled out, that this is a BS charge. Who cares? It's a crime without a victim. It's kind of a victimless crime. And what he said was, look, this is New York City. This is the financial capital of the world. And this is the bread and butter, white collar crimes that we prosecute all day long. Because in New York City, whether it's trying to cover up financial crimes or sex crimes or election crimes, these are the kinds of cases that we bring. And no, it's not unusual for us to bring these kinds of cases. And we file them routinely. What do you make of that, Mutaqee, and Alvin Bragg trying to get ahead of this argument that somehow Donald Trump has been singled out?
I agree with you. I think that was his way of kind of, quieting that rhetoric down, of saying that he was singled out. And he kind of lined it up and said, look, whenever, like you said, it's a sex crime, if it's a financial crime, anytime that we have an issue, we look at, did they falsify business records? And if they did they do it in a way to try to hide something else or defraud the government in some kind of way? And if it's there, they charge it. If it's not, they don't. And it's just one of those things that they charge often in New York City. And again, and I think that does two things. One, it shows that Donald Trump is not being singled out. Two, it says, look, we know what we're doing, and we're prepared to fight this charge, and we know we have the facts in order to get a jury at the end of it to find this man guilty based on these facts. And I think, Alvin Bragg, he made it a point to say he's been practicing for 24 years as a prosecutor that entire time. I think he knows what's on the line as far as, one, his own integrity and reputation, and two, I think we all know if you try to shoot at the king, you better not miss. And I think, whatever circle that you're in, you understand that Trump, can be identified as a king, especially in New York City, no matter what his popularity is. And I know he thought it through, and he knows that, he better not miss. And he's familiar enough with this statute and this law in order to go after him with this.
Yeah, Melanie, I guess what's so shocking to me is here are Republicans, Kevin McCarthy, and all these other, Ron DeSantis, they're expressing all of this outrage. And on the Capitol, they say they're going to investigate Alvin Bragg, which, Republicans typically are the biggest states' rights proponents, but now all of a sudden they're going to use the federal government and the power of the federal government to try, which I don't think they'll be successful, but to try to interfere in what's happening in a state court prosecution, which the federal government has absolutely zero power over. And Mr. Bragg said, look, bring it on. I'm ready for it. But
no, he didn't. No, that's not what he said. What he said was, I'm not going to talk to y'all. I'm not talking to y'all. I don't want to talk to y'all. You're interfering. He actually said he's not going to talk to them. He's refused to speak to them. He did not say
refused to speak to them because they have no jurisdiction over him. They have no power over him.
Just like he doesn't have any jurisdiction over that federal law that he's trying to tie to make it a felony.
He has no power over the Congress has no power over him, which is why by him not addressing them, that is his way of saying, bring it on. I'll see you in court. And let's be clear, the indictment doesn't solely rest on federal law. Mr. Bragg was very clear in that press conference that Trump violated New York tax codes. And so he is able to rely on that violation of that New York statute to bump what otherwise would be a misdemeanor up to a felony. But I want to ask you, Melanie, I don't understand the hypocrisy of these Republicans. Here is a man that's covering up two affairs, and you can't deny that. And
that's not illegal.
That's not illegal. I didn't ask you. Melanie, you got to listen to the question. He said it on the plane to Michael Cohen. He said it. Well, he didn't say it to Michael Cohen, but he said it on the plane. I wasn't doing it to influence the election. That's what he says. We don't believe him. But he says, I did it so my wife wouldn't find out. But I want to ask you about the hypocrisy, not the legal issue. I want to ask you, here is the Republicans that are supposed to be the family values party, the party that believed in family values. They criticize poor single Black mothers for having kids without having fathers in the home. They criticize folks for having what they call, sex out of marriage. Here is that party who is standing by the man who admits to have covered up affairs that he had while he was married, has been twice impeached and now indicted. And they're saying, we still want him to be our president. Help us understand that.
2 failed impeachments, to be clear. to failed impeachments, and nobody is saying that he was right morally for having an affair if he had an affair. And they had a non-disclosure agreement, is my understanding. So of course you're not going to talk about it. It was a nuisance lawsuit, so of course he wanted to pay it off and didn't want to bother his wife with something like that. But no, you can support not being indicted for your personal, failures, if you will, and also think that, this is a bad prosecution. No other person under these same set of circumstances would have been indicted. Not to mention, and I just want to say this, Republicans do not, as a whole, like you're painting Republicans as a blanket, blame Black mothers for being single mothers. What they say is 70% of poverty, one of the markers for poverty is not having a father in a home, not finishing high school. Those are the markers for continuing poverty. Nobody that I know, no Republicans that I know, are pointing at single Black mothers and saying that they're horrible people for having babies out of wedlock. And not for nothing, if we're going to talk about the moms, we also have to talk about the dad, because as far as I know, I'm not a biologist, but I don't think that women are having babies by themselves. Let's just stay on the point, Melanie. First of all, that's categorically untrue. But the question I'm asking you is about supporting him for president. I'm not saying supporting him to be a dog catcher or to run your neighborhood homeowners association. This is the man you want to serve as the president of the most powerful nation in the world. We want to put him out to world leaders. So you can't be an adulterer and serve as president? I seem to remember a very well-known, well-liked hero of the Democrat Party known as Bill Clinton, who was a very famous philanderer and adulterer, and I don't see him getting shade for that. Oh, he got plenty of shade for that. But let's be clear. Let's compare apples. Melanie, let's compare apples. Though, right? But let's compare apples to apples. Bill Clinton was not impeached twice, and nor has he been indicted in a 13 or 34 count indictment. Well, let me ask you this. It's a fluffy indictment. It's nothing fluffy about it. It's a very serious indictment, and he seemingly knows that, which is why he was so somber in that courthouse. Mutaqee, what do you make of Republicans who are trying to dismiss the indictment? You're a criminal defense attorney. Is this a nothing indictment? Is this something, Donald Trump can walk away from, or are these serious charges where he could be facing serious jail time?
I think they are serious charges. I think, anything from a misdemeanor to a felony is a serious charge. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for the government either. And that's me as a criminal defense attorney. I think they will have to, and it's one of those things that's going to be all or nothing. So if his theory is correct on count 1, it's going to be correct on count 34. So it's really going to come down to, did he falsify business records? And I think that will be clear. What I do think they're going to really have to show and prove was his intent to falsify those records, was his intent to defraud or hide another crime. And he kind of anticipated that by saying, hey, I just didn't want my wife to see it, as opposed to, I was trying to, hide this tax violation, or I was trying to hide from these election laws. So, and we have to remember, the government has to prove the case. They have the burden to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So if they can throw in, if Trump's lawyers, and I'm sure they're going to be prepared, those in any reasonable doubt, then it goes to Trump. So I don't think it's completely dismissive, the fact that it got this far and that he was charged, but I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for the government either, where he's going to be automatically trying to take a plea. And I just want to make one more point before you step in, Melanie, that I think the Democrats, actually should take some cues from the Republicans when it comes to their allegiance to different members in their party, no matter what. They will defend their other party members no matter what. And, even DeSantis, his own opponent, my governor down here in Florida, it was willing to not extradite Trump, and saying that these were trumped up charges, just pardon the pun. And that's his opponent. That the next day Trump had commercials going against DeSantis, and he's still defending them. So I think the Democrats need to take a cue. Like whenever a Democrat is bought down or indicted even, or bad news come out, we turn against them immediately. But with Republicans, they stick together no matter what. No matter if it's the adulterer that says grab them by whatever, they're going to stick with that person and try to justify him morally, or no matter what. So I think the Democrats should take a cue to stick to the same way the Republicans do.
I want to correct something. Hold on a second, Melanie. I want to make a correction so we make sure we all are talking about the facts, because facts do matter. Bragg, in explaining the predicates for the felony, said the first is New York state election law, not federal, New York state election law, which makes it a crime to conspire to promote a candidacy by unlawful means. He said, I further indicated a number of unlawful means, including additional false statements, including statements that were planned to be made to tax authorities. He noted the federal election law cap on contribution limits. So it's important that we note that the predicates is New York state tax law and New York state election law, and federal election law only comes in as it relates to the cap on contribution limits. When we come forward, more on the historic indictment of former President Donald Trump, right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Right at Holt Avenue got a brand new crash, and the two left lanes are going to be blocked. In Torrance, 91 eastbound at the 405, still got that crash in the right lane of the transition to the 405 south. You're going to be stop and go coming away from Val Avenue. Also in Linwood, 105 westbound, right at Long Beach Boulevard, got a disabled vehicle in the lanes. You're going to hit the brakes from the 605.
Nearly 3,000 teen drivers die in car crashes each year. Tire Rack Street Survival is designed to save lives. The one-day hands-on driving school gives teens experience in car control through exercises that include emergency braking and skid recovery. Find a class near you at TireRack.com/survive.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers are going for their fourth straight win tonight at Utah. A win could move them into the fifth spot in the Western Conference. The Lakers are seventh, but only a half game behind the Clippers and Phoenix for fifth. The Lakers are on a serious roll. They are 6-1 in their last 7 games. The White House clarified First Lady Jill Biden's comments about inviting LSU and Iowa's women's basketball teams to D.C. for a celebration. A White House spokesperson said Jill Biden was complimenting Iowa on their sportsmanship when she talked about the two teams. If there's a celebration, the spokesperson said it would only be for LSU, the national champs. When the White House is talking about women's college basketball, that means the sport is trending big time. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Access granted. In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for Black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of Black audiences are concerned about the lack of Black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the Black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% Black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black. Your Black. Your Black.
Jai Person Lynn here with Person Lynn Law Office. As a fourth-generation Angelino, educated at Hampton University and Howard University School of Law, I understand the importance of upholding your human and civil rights whenever dealing with law enforcement. Whether facing a misdemeanor, felony, or infraction, I'm here to ease the stress and uncertainty that comes with an arrest or criminal charge. My team is dedicated to providing the best legal representation, and we will work with you at every step to ensure you are fully informed and your rights are protected. With nearly 2 decades of experience and a long track record of success, I will work diligently to ensure the best possible outcome. Call me as soon as you're aware of police contact at 424-261-2075. That's 424-261-2075. Person Lynn Law Office supports the right to a fair trial for Los Angeles Council Member Mark Ridley Thomas.
Look. Our Weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited Black newspaper in the state of California with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For your advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call Our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. Today, I was able to speak with Ola Wadibia, VP of Women on the Move. Hi, Ola. Tell me a bit about this initiative by JP Morgan Chase, founded in 2013.
Women on the Move is a center of excellence at JP Morgan Chase and our global DEI organization, where we really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's really awesome about Chase's approach is that all of our centers of excellence, and there are 7 of them, focus on different demographic groups, is that we're really focusing on what's happening internally in the firm and also what's happening out in community. So really, Women on the Move is really focused on thinking about how do we help advance women professionally and personally.
I love it. So tell me about this beautifully updated banking branch here on Crenshaw.
That was really important. A part of our racial equity commitment was to build in place for Chase. So being able to revamp this beautiful space, to be able to welcome community members, today, anyone, nonprofit, organization, school can actually do events in our community center that we're sitting in here for free. Yes, people come inside, grab a coffee, use the Wi-Fi. It's free.
Yes, Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
I'm back, and we are talking about the historic event that happened in a downtown Manhattan court today. For the first time in U.S. history, a former president was charged, and in this case, 34-count indictment, criminal charges against Donald Trump for allegedly making false business statements related to covering up an affair he had with Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. Joining me in this hour is criminal defense attorney Mutaqee Akbar and Republican political commentator Melanie Collette. Right before we went to break, Melanie, you were making a point. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say that I don't recall anybody who was defending Donald Trump, defending his possible immoral actions. What they were saying is that he is being unfairly treated, unfairly persecuted, and that if his name wasn't Donald J. Trump, like, he would not have been charged with this crime. My understanding is that the payments didn't even start till after the election. How is that in any way, shape, or form connected to well, in New Jersey, it's called elect. I've been a treasurer on a couple of campaigns. I'm very familiar with the complexities of campaign law, at least here in New Jersey. But they wouldn't have even known about it till after the filing. You have to file, like, I don't know, in New Jersey, it's like 29 days after Election Day.
Well, I'm glad you bring up the issue of filing, because that's at the heart of this case, Mutaqee, because Melanie is right. If these payments were not made for the purpose of influencing the 2016 presidential election, then it isn't a crime. And that's going to be the burden on the part of the prosecution. They have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the payments were intended. They started in 2017. The deal was made with Stormy Daniels' lawyer 2 weeks before the 2016 campaign. So the $130,000 paid to Stormy Daniels' attorney happened 2 weeks before the 2016 election. It was in 2017 that Donald Trump starts to pay back Michael Cohen, who had set up the Shell Corporation, and they were trying to figure out how does Michael Cohen get his money back? And Michael Cohen didn't just want the money back. If he was going to have to claim that $130,000 as income, Mutaqee, he also wanted to be paid back the taxes that he had to pay on the $130,000. So if the payments were really intended to keep these negative stories about affairs from coming out before that 2016 election, then obviously those payments were political spending. And if they're political spending from from a candidate or an agent of the candidate's campaign, they are subject to contribution limits and reporting requirements. And we know that these payments were not reported, and that in fact they were registered in checks written to Michael Cohen, and he was paid over time as fake payments for legal services for Michael Cohen, because Michael Cohen was a barred lawyer at the time. But how is the government going to prove what these payments were intended for? That the payments were really aimed at influencing the election versus trying to keep his affairs away from his wife and family?
I think they're just going to have to connect the dots, and connecting the dots would be, like you just stated, the $130,000 was paid to Stormy Daniels before the elections, and he stated that. Well, I think they can show that we need to keep her, what they call it, like catch and trap or trap and catch.
Catch and kill.
Catch and kill, right. So catch the bad news and kill it before it comes out. And so Stormy Daniels and Ms. McCullough were the bad news, and they wanted to stop it from coming out because they thought if it came out, then it could affect the election. And so if the $130,000 was paid by Michael Cohen, that in order to affect the election, or that would have been considered a campaign contribution or something going towards the campaign, which would have needed to be reported. And I think that's the theory that they're going under. And then if he's paying them back for that and in the taxes, then that also, it's all connected. So it starts with the $130,000 and then it goes towards, the repayments. And each repayment was used to cover up the fact that the $130,000 was paid in order to not affect the election, which would be the intent to defraud those election law and those tax laws, because they're adding money on in order to cover those taxes, and lying and saying that it was used for Michael Cohen's legal fees. So that's the connection, and they'll just have to connect those dots in order to show that.
Yeah, we know oftentimes the cover-up is worse than the crime, and many folks go to jail because they are involved in illegal activity, then they try to cover it up. Melanie, I want to ask you, though, about Donald Trump's response. So he's been acting, all big and bad, like this doesn't faze him. We know he's raising money on the indictment. I read at one point he had raised $7 million, and I read another time it was $4 million. But really what I want to ask you about are these veiled threats that he's making towards Alvin Bragg. He's brought his wife into it. There was a photograph that he tweeted holding a baseball bat. Donald Trump can be upset. Anybody that gets indicted, Joe Blow, on the corner, nobody wants to be hauled into court and have to face legal jeopardy. No one wants to have to hire lawyers. No one wants to go to trial and have to face that decision. Do I testify on my own behalf, or do I try to raise reasonable doubt through other evidence? So we get it. He's mad. He's frustrated. Of course, anybody would be. But he takes his frustration a step further, and he starts intimidating or trying to intimidate and threaten people. So to the extent the Republicans aren't going to stand up to him because he is violating everything they've stood for, and now you're suggesting that the Republican Party wasn't the family values party. Okay.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Okay, because y'all like to change up whatever. You go with the wind.
What I said was is that we don't pick on single mothers.
Well, that's not accurate, too. If we had more time, we could pull you some receipts on that as well.
We'll do a separate show.
But talk to me about these threats.
What
we
threats?
know he's threatening Alvin Bragg.
How is he threatening him?
The post, and maybe I could have my producer pull it up, the tweet, if it's probably been deleted by now.
That's what you consider. If that's what he considers a threat, then he's doing pretty well as a prosecutor. I'm sure. Oh, and you know what? He probably doesn't get threatened by legitimate, violent bad guys because he never sends them to jail. So maybe that's why that's considered a threat. A Facebook post is. I don't consider that.
Well, we know
threat.
that's
I've
how
been threatened on social media plenty of times by men, and I'm a single woman because of my political beliefs. I don't look at that as a threat. Alvin Bragg's a grown behind man. If he's threatened by a graphic on social media, then he's probably in the wrong business.
Well, we know, Mutaqee, that Alvin Bragg has been threatened. We know that Donald Trump has a way of signaling to his base. That's why we had January 6th. He has a way of galvanizing his base. That's why Nancy Pelosi's poor husband was clobbered in the head with a hammer. So that's what Donald Trump does. Why do you think the judge, though, Mutaqee, when the prosecution again brought it up, again, here we are talking about a president. We cannot lose sight of this. We're talking about a former president, someone who's running for president, where you got a prosecutor having to say to the judge, this man is dangerous. This man is threatening our prosecutor. We're worried not only about the prosecutor, we know he may try to threaten the jurors. He's attacked our whole judicial system. The guy that was elected to uphold our system is now attacking it. Why do you think the judge didn't come down harder on Trump and the team today, Mutaqee?
I think the judge have to keep that appearance that he's impartial. And if he would have taken the prosecutor's position and came down hard, that would have given them a lot more fuel to come out and say, look, the prosecutor's against me, this unfair prosecution. Now, look, the judge is against me also. So I think the judge was smart in the way that he handled it. He addressed it kind of level-handed. And that way, if it continues, he can come down harder. But he can start off the way that he did, just by saying, "Hey, don't do that," and we'll address it later. So I think he was smart by doing that.
Yeah, when we come forward, more on the historic indictment of a former U.S. president. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
All I need is one mic.
For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley with a KBLA editorial. I've said it all along. Presumption of innocence, fundamental fairness, due process. Convicted now on 7 counts in his federal bribery case, LA City Councilman Mark Willie Thomas scarcely got 1, and his chances of getting the other 2 were slim to none, and Slim was out of town. Did you hear the jury forewoman's comments? The jurors were confused by the jury instructions, confused by the answers to the almost 12 questions they sent to the judge. She acknowledged that some jurors were not even paying attention. And she said the jury knew that the $100,000 contribution from MRT was legal, but the way the jury instructions were written made them feel like they had to find MRT guilty of wire fraud. Again, those are her words. So let me offer you just 3 questions that I want you to ponder. 1, why do you think the U.S. government spent millions of dollars of your money going after an
We are back and we're talking about the historic indictment of a former U.S. president. Happened today in the Manhattan courthouse, a downtown courthouse in Manhattan today. Donald Trump had to appear for an arraignment where he pled not guilty to a 34-count indictment. The indictment was later unsealed. And we have been able to take a look at it and see what the charges are. They all stem from payments made by his then attorney fixer, Michael Cohen, to try to catch and kill, to stories that were negative to Donald Trump that they believed could have impacted the 2016 election, or at least those are the allegations in that indictment. Melanie, what, if any, impact do you think this indictment and potential other indictments that Donald Trump may be facing will have on his re-election bid for 2024?
You know, I think it's going to continue to fire up his base, but I'm not as concerned about that as I am about the overall divisiveness that it is lending to in the country. You know, it's really, President Biden was asked today if he felt that the indictment would promote divisiveness, and he smiled. He's supposed to be the president. He didn't say anything who was going to bring the country together, and he smiled. Like, I'm way more concerned about that. I'm concerned about the people of New York City. While Alvin Bragg is spending his time trying to make sure that he can prosecute Donald Trump, he is lowering the charges on violent offenders, and it's a very dangerous place for people to live nowadays. I was in New York over the weekend. Not very comfortable as it used to be back in the day. And, you know, it's a very good chance that if something were to happen to me and I defend myself, I'm going to be the one who ends up in handcuffs. I don't know. It's really hard to understand why why a prosecutor would act the way he acts. But I think that it's going to fire up his base. I don't know how Donald Trump is going to end up doing, whether or not he'll end up being a nominee or not. But I do think that it is throwing fuel on an already lit fire when it comes to divisiveness in the country, political divisiveness. And I think that part is sad and did not have to be. It wasn't worth it. You know, you spent millions of dollars.
Melanie, hold a second, Melanie. You're concerned about Joe Biden smiling, but yet when I ask you about the threats that Donald Trump has made. On his social media platform, he's threatened death and destruction. His words, if he was indicted, that was before the indictment. And in a post last month on the same social media platform, Truth Social, he called Alvin Bragg an animal, backed by the liberal mega donor George Soros, who is Jewish. So you're concerned about Joe Biden giving, I'm sure, what was a sarcastic smile, if anything, but yet you're not saying anything about these obvious threats towards Alvin Bragg. And speaking of New York, I was there. Hold on. Speaking of New York, I was there myself this weekend. I walked around the entire city with my two daughters. I didn't feel threatened at all. We were walking at night. We were walking at day. So obviously, we must have been visiting two different New Yorks. I felt incredibly safe, so much so that I was out walking at night. But I do want to ask you before we run out of Mutaqee, this indictment obviously does not prevent Donald Trump from running. You can run for president while being indicted. You can run for president even if you are convicted of crimes, including felonies. But what impact do you think it will have, not just on the election, but on those other investigations, the one in Georgia, the two that are taking place in the Justice Department? Do you think they will in any way escalate those investigations, and we may see indictments coming down from those investigatory bodies?
I still think there might be some indictments coming down from those as well. And I think this being the start of it could hopefully push those prosecutors to move forward. And again, I think they are being careful. I think they want to make sure that if they indict, that they can get a conviction as well. And I think that's very important, because the one thing that we don't want Trump to get indicted and then get found not guilty, because then he'll feel very, very untouchable at that point. So I think they're being careful. But I do think this is probably a step in the right direction of these other prosecutions as well.
Yeah, and we were able to find that tweet, the tweet of Donald Trump in the back. Let's take a look at it. So I don't know about you. Alvin Bragg is clearly not a punk, because he stood up to Donald Trump in ways that nobody has been willing to do. He was willing to be the first to jump out there and indict him. But no one, including a sitting district attorney, should be subjected to that kind of threatening social media posts. And we do know that Donald Trump speaks to his followers in these coded kind of pictures and images and words. And I hear what you're saying, Mutaqee, about the judge being careful, because we are in uncharted water and territory with the indictment of a former president who's running for president. So the judge obviously wanted to be mindful of his First Amendment rights, mindful of his rights to be able to go out and campaign and talk about his indictment. But I hope this judge has a short, fuse when it comes to this kind of nonsense and this kind of threats, because these threats can lead to someone's safety being jeopardized. And to bring in Alvin Bragg's wife, I mean, but it's just classic Donald Trump. He talked about Ted Cruz's family members. He talked about Marco Rubio's family members. That's what he does. He goes so low. He shoots below the belt. He goes to the base. He appeals to the people's, just their base instincts to try to make his point. And the reality here is this man has done something no other president has done in the history of this country, and that is to be twice impeached and now once indicted for covering up crimes so that he could win the 2016 election. And this case is going to be a case of first impression. Mutaqee, before I let you go, what about trial? It's probably going to happen either right in the midst of this election, 2024, or right after. What's your prediction?
I was, kind of thinking about that as well. And his attorneys might try to file for a speedy trial to get it over with, faster, as opposed to trying to stretch it out. Because again, they don't want it to go on like in the middle of the election. So that might be my strategy. I think, like I said, it's 34 counts, but it's one incident times 34 seems pretty straightforward, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's going to take that long to do it. If they don't, then we're looking at probably December, January for the election to take place and the trial to take place.
Yeah, Melanie, will the party stand behind Trump if he is convicted of any of these charges?
I don't know. I can't speak for the party. I would think that you would have to have a whole lot more evidence, but I don't know. I would think the circles in which I travel, I'd be privy to these secret languages, and I have never been motivated to go hurt anyone, or even, I don't even curse at people who don't agree with me, let alone threaten them violently. So I don't know. I don't know this secret language or the dog whistles or whatever. And I feel like I said, the circles in which I travel, I'd be privy to these things. And I am not, but I hear people on the other side of the aisle accusing
Melanie, it's not just people on the other side of the aisle. Some of those insurrectionists in their sentencing hearing told the judge that Donald Trump told them to come to D.C., that Donald Trump told them to invade the Capitol as they were pleading for their freedom. They were saying, oh, this is the worst mistake I ever made. I followed this man. He summons us here. So these aren't the words of Democrats. These aren't the words of folks that don't like Donald Trump. These are the words of his followers who said they risked their own freedom. They destroyed their families. They lost their jobs because they listened to Donald Trump, who told them to come to Washington. So we're not making this up. This is real. Republicans need to figure out what y'all going to do with Donald Trump, because you can't continue to live in this fake fantasy world that he has created. The facts are the facts. And Alvin Bragg has set the standard for other prosecutors around this country to stand up to Donald Trump. And I said this in my first hour of the show. If somebody had stood up to Donald Trump decades ago when he was discriminating against blacks in New York, when he was manipulating the values of his property, and when he was doing all kinds of other stuff that would have landed me, you, or Mutaqee in jail, Donald Trump wouldn't be facing, I think, the kind of criminal jeopardy that he faces today. But it is because people have enabled him. They have surrounded and they've supported his BS that now he finds himself the only former president in this country's history to be facing felony indictment. And I predict that this is one of many. We're going to continue to follow. We're going to continue to follow this case.
Joe Biden is right behind him. If that's the standard that Alvin Bragg has set, Joe Biden will be in the cell right next to my boy.
Yeah, that's what you Republicans would like to think. You all are in la la land, fantasy land. Donald Trump is going down. And you know what I'm happy about? It's a black man with a Harvard Law degree that's taking him down. On that note, I say good night. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580 Sports News and Traffic up next.
For the electric car maker.